Senhoras e senhores, boa tarde a todos. Peço a atenção dos senhores, pois vamos assistir neste momento a um vídeo institucional da cidade de São Paulo.
Bem-vindo à cidade de São Paulo, uma das maiores metrópoles do mundo, vibrante, pulsante, humana e diversa. Uma cidade acolhedora para todos, que é um pouco do mundo todo num só lugar.
Sou São Paulo, São Paulo, sou São Paulo, São Paulo.
A cidade de São Paulo tem muito para mostrar. É uma cidade que se destaca em diversos pontos importantes, não só para quem vive aqui. A força da cidade de São Paulo é a força do Brasil. Um Brasil que conta com a cidade de São Paulo de hoje e com a São Paulo dos próximos anos.
Sou São Paulo, São Paulo, sou São Paulo.
A cidade de São Paulo atrai pessoas de todo o país e de todo o mundo. A cidade não para de crescer e se desenvolver, oferecendo cada vez mais oportunidades e qualidade de vida para todos.
A cidade de São Paulo atrai milhões de turistas por ano. Sua diversidade, hospitalidade, gastronomia e vida noturna são imbatíveis. Somos a única cidade no mundo com 3 grandes prêmios internacionais do automobilismo e o número de eventos e feiras de negócios cresce a cada ano com novas oportunidades todos os dias.
Sou São Paulo, São Paulo.
Atividade cultural é o que não falta na cidade de São Paulo. Todos os dias acontece uma grande variedade de atrações culturais para visitar ou participar ativamente. O cenário cultural paulistano é um dos mais importantes do mundo e já somos a capital dos shows na América Latina.
Mas não é só no crescimento e desenvolvimento que a cidade de São Paulo se destaca. Para compensar tudo isso, ela é uma cidade com muito verde. Seus inúmeros parques, praças, áreas verdes e ruas arborizadas somam mais da metade do seu território, trazendo mais saúde e qualidade de vida à população. A cidade tem até um polo de ecoturismo e áreas de proteção ambiental com trechos de Mata Atlântica intocada, fauna e flora preservadas.
Tudo isso mostra que a cidade de São Paulo é muito mais do que você imagina. Uma cidade cada vez melhor no presente e cada vez mais preparada para o futuro. Venha, visite, invista, faça parte.
São Paulo, São Paulo, sou São Paulo, São Paulo, sou São Paulo, São Paulo, sou São Paulo, São Paulo.
Viva São Paulo!
São Paulo, São Paulo.
Boa tarde.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we start the next panel, we'd like to register and thank the presence of all of the guests and the authorities here. This plenary, Social Inclusion and Fight Against Hunger and Poverty, focuses on the importance of adopting bold targets and consistent that will mitigate the multifaceted causes and interconnected causes between poverty and hunger. We must pull our efforts through towards food security, social protection, and climate adaptation in order to achieve the real progress. Cities are main actors for these achievements, and they have necessary agility for the reduction in the inequality and fight against hunger and poverty. In 2022, 750 million people fought against hunger, while 2.4 billion fought against food insecurity at moderate or severe levels. We're going to ask to the stage representing authorities so that they can share their perspectives and actions in this important topic. We'll ask to the stage Mayor Ricardo Muniz of the City of São Paulo and co-president of the U20. Mr. Weku Melvin, Deputy Mayor of Freetown. Felipe, he is the Sherpa of Brazil in G20 and General Coordinator of the G20 in the Foreign Affairs Ministry. And the moderator of this panel, we ask Ms. Emilia Saez, Secretary of Network Cities and Government, Local Governments. Please, Ms. Emilia.
Nós passamos então a palavra à senhora Emília, que fará a moderação deste painel.
Thank you very much and welcome everybody. Mayor, we have had a long day. We have started early this morning already to discuss many of the topics that are of great importance for the world as we know it. And above all, we have also been discussing the solutions that we think cities can bring to the decision-making table. So a very productive day that we are going to be closing today with the opening ceremony of the official work and with this plenary. I would like to acknowledge the man of the hour, the mayor of São Paulo that has welcomed us. I think he deserves another round of applause, indeed. Thank you, Mayor. And although we are in this celebratory mode, because although things are so grim and difficult in the world, we are still able to do some magical things like coming together here to talk about solutions. I want to go back to the very serious topic that we're going to be dealing in this plenary. It seems hard to understand that a generation of 8 billion people that inhabit this planet, with the kind of data, of knowledge, of technical advancements that we have made. A generation that is wasting food every day, throwing food away, that has too much waste to manage, that knows much more than past generations in informal sense of the world because we have more technology and more science, is still a generation that is dealing with great inequalities, with great challenges of inclusion, and we're fighting hunger and poverty. And that is the topic today. So I wanted to start with you, Mayor. We have seen the beauty of São Paulo. We have seen the power of the people, everything that we are able to do as cities in the world with that creative energy. But when it comes to inclusion and the fight against poverty, I want to know from you, what are your challenges? What are the type of investments that you need actually to make inclusion a reality? And what are the challenges that you are finding to identify those investments? So the floor to you, Mayor, and welcome again.
Muito obrigado. Queria dar boas-vindas.
I'd like to welcome everyone who came here to the city of São Paulo. You should be very welcome. We're very proud to receive this plenary of Fight Against Hunger and Poverty in the opening of the ceremony of the Urban 20. It is a topic for us that has a lot of importance, but let me name a few authorities here, please. I'd like to thank the presence of the Ambassador Antonio da Costa, head of the International Advisory of the Ministry of Cities, representing the federal government. I'd like also to thank the members of the National Caucus of Mayors. And there is association here in São Paulo that gathers the mayors of the most populated cities in the country. And the president is here today, and he gets honors here it's the mayor of Aracaju in the northeastern region of Brazil, Mayor Evaldo Nogueira also, and the vice president and the mayor of Niterói of Rio de Janeiro, Gilberto Perry, and Gabriela Vodon from Recife, José Trindade from Paraupebas, Recomeu Vim from Freetown, Sierra Leone,
da Índia,
Plati from India,
Sangam King,
Sangam King from South Korea, the deputy mayors as well, Amandeza Miran from South Africa,
Aldo Rebelo,
Aldo Rebelo, our great Secretary of International Relations responsible for this meeting with the other international and national organizations that performs a very good work. Aldo Rebelo was the president of the House of Representatives and the National Congress, and he was the minister in many different areas, and it's a reason of pride for Aldo Rebelo to be leading the foreign international relations here in the state of São Paulo. The Ambassador Maria Auxiliadora, the Deputy Secretary of International Relations, Emilia, the National Secretary of the Local Government Network, Emilia, and Felipe Riz, General Coordinator of the G20 in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Antonio Mariano, General Coordinator of the Town Hall of Rio de Janeiro, representing here the Mayor Eduardo Paes from the city of Rio, the President of SP Businesses, João Manuel, the committees of the cities of Urban 20, Director of International Relations, the representatives of international organizations, and our colleagues from the press. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a fundamental topic, and we're really proud to say what are our experiences. We understand that the best tool to reduce inequality socially is directly related to the poverty and hunger. The best tool is the opportunity of when we're trying to heat up the economy and fiscal responsibility as well, so that in the future, we will not have a situation that we create instability in the economy in the cities. And when you have a very strong action and a very vibrant economy, we manage to collect more taxes and to turn them into actions for the people who are the ones that need it the most. We have our city. I'd like to greet the Imprensa Jovem, the young people with the orange shirt. It's a reason of pride for us because they are the ones that do the young press in Portuguese, Imprensa Jovem. So they ask, they discuss, and they analyze, they disseminate the information along with their communities. And when I arrived here, they asked me, Mr. Mayor, what are the actions that we have here in our town regarding fighting hunger? And I talked to them, and I can tell you as well, the city of São Paulo has a distribution of 2.6 million meals a day, 2.6 million a day. So we are very pleased with the fact that a city that has 12 million people, we have daycare places for every child. For some people, they might say, oh, what is the advantage? Why are you so surprised? But here in Brazil, we have 2.3 million kids who need a daycare position or vacancy, and they do not have, none of them live in the city of São Paulo. So when we have a child in daycare, this kid has 5 meals, and they are secure in terms of food security. In our municipal network, we have 2.3 million meals a day. So we wanted to have a meal of a very high quality, especially because I'd like to tell you that personally, I come from a poor neighborhood in the city of São Paulo. I went to public school, and almost every day, Edivaldo from the National Caucus of Mayors said it was pasta, and pasta. I mean, like own the same type of pasta. And nowadays we have a very different type of menu. There is a very diverse menu. The kids who are in the municipal network of schools, and you can see that they're kind of chubby, the kids. And so we have a very good food that is prepared by nutritionists and some actions that are pretty interesting. And that's a very positive thing that the city of São Paulo has. The other day, I was visiting Curitiba, the city of Curitiba, and it is a city in a neighboring state here of the. And I was talking to the mayor, it's like there is this food bank. In Portuguese, it would be a food bank, and it kind of sells a very, very cheap product, and they have a 50% discount here. And why are we saying this? Because we have phases, and and you have people in a situation of poverty and people who have very little money, and they need access to cheaper food and products, which is the case of the Armazéns Solidários, or Solidarity Food Bank in Portuguese. And there are situations in which they have a house and they need basic products or the basket of basic products, and every day there is a distribution of 7,000 basic product baskets, and we take them to the poor neighborhoods of the city. In summary, there is a very strong action connected to providing food products and food security, and this environment to generate income and employment so people can have an opportunity. I'd like to share with you an experience that is very interesting, that is connected within this context. There is Urban 20, C40, and everyone who's present here in this plenary knows this, which is the issue of sustainability. There is a very intrinsic aspect concerning the food security. In the city of São Paulo, we have more than 50% of the city with green coverage, that is vegetation. So in the past it was 48%, nowadays we have 50%. So there is a very strong work of keeping the agricultural areas in one of the fifth largest metropolis in the world, and there are a lot of areas with family or small family plots that produce food, and we try to help them to stick to this place, producing food and other types of organic products, and we try to acquire or procure this product. And besides the encouragement and the action of encouragement for these people to keep producing, and I want to give you an example here, if you have not implemented this project like this in your city. The agricultural or the small farmers have a lot of competition with the big farmers, of course, with the huge properties that produce in really large volumes, and they have small prices. So there is a product called Samba Mais Rural, or more Samba standing for the word of São Paulo, and we register these producers, and the town hall provides funding for these projects that are presented. One of them, the secretary and Aldo Rebelo and I, we went to one of these properties, these small properties. One of them, there was this woman, small farmer, and she received a lot of visitation because agricultural areas nowadays can have the opportunity for rural visits as well, or rural tourism. A lot of people from the big cities, they go there and it's like a tour. So I believe that the prize or the funding that was given was for this project was 35,000 reais, and she used it to create her accessibility in her small plot, and she makes small systems, make fruits and vegetables, and she basically started. She opened the doors for visitation, and in order to people to visit, there was the need for accessibility. So we managed to do both things. We preserved the area, and we also created this opportunity for this school of agriculture, school of agrotourism, as an activity that shows how important food security is. So I'd like to highlight the and thank you for your presence here, and we're here to share with your experiences and to learn with your experiences as well. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, also for breaking that glass that seems to say that agriculture and cities do not go together. I do think that it can go together, and that all the big cities in the world, but also in particular the intermediary cities, the system of cities, are drawing an urban-rural continuum. And I think nature-based solutions and taking care of that is extremely important. It's some of what we are trying to bring to the table of the G20. So very, very grateful for that, and congratulations for having young people following these discussions and having your ear and influencing your decisions, because it's extremely relevant. So let me go to a different part of the world and to a different size of city. We have talked about this, Deputy Mayor. The Deputy Mayor of Freetown is with us, Mayor Keku Melvin Sheldon Lisk. Different sizes, to some extent different realities, but very similar concerns, Mayor. So I would like you to share with us, what are you doing in Freetown to ensure that we can bridge some of the most important gaps in relation to, for instance, education, and what can local service provision mean to your citizens? Welcome again, Mayor.
Thank you very much for having me. I'd like to firstly thank Rio and Sao Paulo for this opportunity to actually share with you guys the challenges we face in Freetown as a small city, as you just mentioned. I just want to go back a little. Beg your pardon. Freetown, the major problem in Freetown today is overcrowding. And overcrowding started from about 20 years ago, when we had the war. And that ended 20 years ago. And today, overcrowding is as a result of climate change, urban migration. We have a lot of farmers, people who live in the rural areas, who migrated to Freetown, who can no longer go back because the crops are failing year in and year out. So we have a situation wherein we have 35% of the urban population, which is about 1.5 million people in Freetown, live in slumming, undeveloped areas. So we find this as a very big challenge in terms of actually addressing the needs of the citizens in Freetown. Even though we are a small community, small city compared to others, we found a way to actually address some of these issues. And the direct impact of the city in terms of access to health, education, and opportunities is something that is of very significant importance to us in Freetown. Given the lack of resources as a city, we have to be very innovative and inclusive to ensure we come up with sustainable interventions that impact the challenges we seek to address. The Mayor and Council have this year revised a policy for which the city has been expanded from Transform Freetown in 2018 to Transform Freetown, Transforming Lives, which focuses on delivering services across 11 priority sectors and key interventions which seek to address education, health, and economic opportunities, to name a few. One of our targets is to ensure 100% of the schools under the Freetown City Council are covered by a monitoring framework by 2026. This is to say, we have to be in a position to effectively monitor the education system in Freetown by 2026. And all of these schools, we're talking about 400 schools which have which are under the purview of the Freetown City Council. To this end, we realized unequal access to education was prevalent amongst children of market women and low-income traders. So we opened an early learning adventure daycare nursery at one of the markets just to experiment, to see what differences we can make to the lives of the very young kids between the ages of 0 to 5 years old, whose parents, very unfortunate, not really from privileged backgrounds, in order to try and provide them with a startup kind of education before they get into the formative years. These children would otherwise have been running around markets in between market stalls, and basically of very little value in terms of being productive in the future. Success of the daycare has actually led to government support, in the sense that the trial of these daycare nursery and markets has actually really helped improve the capacity of the young children that are being brought up in these environments, because we're talking about people who are from extremely vulnerable backgrounds, and without this sort of help, I mean, there's really very little hope for them. And because of the success of this experiment, the government is now actually thinking about bringing this school on board, and we're trying to, well, I guess the biggest challenge for us is usually funding. For everyone else, it's funding, and for us especially so, is funding, because we've not been able to do anything without funding. And we get very little from the central government, because also central government needs funding. So if we've been able to successfully push this initiative to the point where the central government is now thinking of taking it on board, I think that is quite a success in terms of what we're trying to do. We also launched a school leadership program, which supports over 500 school leaders in primary and secondary schools in Freetown. The focus of this is to achieve minimum expectations covering safety, quality of teaching, leadership, and management. And this is something that we found was lacking as a result of not enough qualified teachers, not enough mentoring, because if you know social upbringing, it's not just about your education. It's also about also having good examples to copy, good mentorship. So we've actually tried to create an environment that provides that for the young people. In terms of health, given we don't have fancy and sophisticated health systems as other cities, we have implemented what we can. And one important thing we've tried to do is to address the non-communicable diseases, some things like hypertension and high blood pressure. These things come from actually consuming high sodium meals. So we've tried to introduce the option of low sodium meals that will help reduce high risks of hypertension and high blood pressure. These are non-communicable diseases that account for a high number of deaths amongst vulnerable class of people in Freetown. We've also been able to improve in public health units, where we have been able to construct and expand some health facilities in hard-to-reach communities and increase capacity to help deal with those from vulnerable communities. Now, the problem with overcrowding is, especially in Freetown, which is quite a mountainous terrain, we have a lot of people who live in areas just because of overcrowding that it's just impossible to get services to them. So we really need to be innovative in the way we go about this. And one of the main reasons as well in terms of health is you'll have people who have emergency health needs and living in environments that cannot be reached by any emergency services. You can't even drive a vehicle to some of these areas. You have to walk probably about 2 or 3 miles to get to some of these homes. How do we deal with this? So we've actually tried to bring PHUs as close to these communities as possible. And that is not being done without the help of, obviously, international, national, and good-meaning Samaritans. We're also supporting, as was already mentioned, urban farming. Communities, mostly single parents and heads of households, by providing cash crop seeds, planting tools, and incentives to increase urban agriculture and crop production. Crops are sold in markets, increasing economic activities and income. Crops are also used for personal consumption. Now, something else we've interestingly added to the Transform Freetown, Transforming Lives agenda is heritage tourism, because we find Sierra Leone's Freetown is one of the countries one of the cities where free slaves first came to after the abolition of the slave trade. And we have a lot of cultural heritage that has not been exploited. And we all realize how important tourism is. It's quite interesting to hear 15 million tourists a year. That's amazing. And we're trying to improve our tourist attraction into Freetown as well. So we brought in heritage tourism. And for this, we've actually engaged Freetonians to see where you live, identify something that is special in your area and something that a lot of us do not know about. And then that way we're able to identify these things and actually create jobs as well in the process, making it economically viable. By implementing and improving the Transform Freetown Transforming Lives plan, the City Council aims to deliver services across various sectors. This comprehensive approach will improve the lives of residents and promote equity and equality. Focus on integrating vulnerable groups into economic and social opportunities ensures more inclusive growth and development in Freetown. Having said all of this, the key is funding and consideration. What we have been able to achieve has not been without the support of international and national interventions, be it the European Union, World Bank, or generous individuals who want to help make a change. For this, I look forward to contributions touching and concerning access to funding. Countries like mine have a very little footprint in climate disaster, but will bear the brunt of its effect. So we are appealing for help and with regards excess in funds. The only way we can do more, despite our efforts, we will still need to do we still have a significant shortfall and we need funding. It's very interesting because we have a challenge in terms of accessing funding from some international partners in the sense that they can only support the city through the central government. And when you have countries like my city, for example, and the mayors probably from one political party, it is not part of the ruling party, you find funding is not that easy to come through because it sort of serves as a campaign mechanism. So it's a bit of a challenge, and it'd be interesting to have a conversation to see how international organizations can actually directly impact cities with the funding as opposed to going through the central government. And even if they do have to go through central government, what mechanisms can be put in place to ensure what is intended for the cities go directly to the cities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That deserves an applaud, I think. Yeah. Thank you very much. As we go through this session, many of the priorities that we have been discussing in the closed door this morning are coming up again. And I think one of the key messages that we are trying to bring to the G20, to the discussions of the G20, is that they need to have a shift in understanding what local service provision can mean in transformation. And if you shift that peace of mind, then you also necessarily will need to shift the type of funding mechanisms that you define, right? And I think that interlocution between the G20 and the Urban 20 is extremely important. Beyond the thematic priorities that we bring to the table as cities, as local governments, and so many of the solutions that you have heard that very often are a small scale. If you look at these cities around the world, they are not all São Paulo, right? Or Rio. So many times these are a small scale, but they could be scaled up if different mechanisms for funding could be done. And this is not an issue of the Global South, and it's not also either an issue of governments with different political color. In countries where you have similar political colors, in many cases, you still face this gap in addressing the priorities at local level. So this is Felipe from our side, what we are trying, and then, yeah, you are the Sue Sherpa of this very important G20. So Felipe Hayes has been kind enough to be with us in this very busy, crazy period that they are organizing the G20. You have heard some of the priorities. Our belief that local service provision can be transformative. You have heard from circular economy to urban gardens to food security programs, What is, from your perspective, how are you looking as SUSERPA for the G20? What are the priorities of your government? What are you trying to bring to the table? And what do you expect from us? I know these are many questions in one, but I'm sure you will be able to address them. Please, Felipe, welcome.
Boa tarde, muito obrigado. É prazer participar desse evento do U20, né, durante a presidência brasileira do G20. O desafio de tratar do tema da inclusão social.
Challenge of addressing fight against hunger and social inequality issues. The Brazilian G20 mandate happens when the world is going through climate crisis. The global governance is not up to much, like the ODS are not enough. So you're not gonna meet with the SDG standards. So Lula determined that the Brazilian mandate had 3 priorities. The first of which is fight against hunger and social inclusion. And the second priority should be energy transition and sustainable development. We focus a lot on the environment, but if we do not take the social and economical issues into consideration, there's no sustainability, because we need all 3 components working so that we can speak of sustainable development. And the third one is the reform of global governance, because we have good agreements, but we need to have legitimacy. We need to put those into action, whatever was agreed internationally. So these were the priorities, and the first of which is social inclusion and fighting against hunger. And this is really special for our President Lula. And shortly after fighting against hunger and poverty, we have the Brazilian programs, the Bolsa Família, the Cadastro Único, that allowed Brazil to leave the hunger map in 2003. So this is a very present concern for our current government. And this was the first big priorities that we established. And now we can link to the G20 priorities and the city's roles. The Melvin Vice Prefecture mentioned that we have a lot of difficulties in funding. This is a great issue, and thinking it at an international scale, funding for fighting against hunger, it's fragmented, it's difficult because we had a lot of constraints, and the number is of OECD, the volume of resources that are destined for the development, only 2% of the funding are converted into public policies that try to fight the SDG problems, the 1 and 2. And we still lack resources. The Brazilian presence tried to focus in an integrated manner and think how we could address the issue, not only from the public policies perspective, but also including fundings. And that's why we organized a task force to create a global alliance against hunger and poverty. And this is certainly one of the main goals of our president. So President Lula himself, he is completely engaged, and there's great international mobility so that this global alliance can be put into action. And We expect that it can improve the fighting against hunger, and so that public policies have the necessary resources. This global alliance is formed. It's a tripod. It is a connection through which you have the knowledge pillar. What is it? That's the public policies focus on fighting against hunger, tested by developing countries. Those are not academic theoretical programs. Those are already piloted programs. We have the Brazilian, Bangladesh with a microcredit. We have social policies which were already tested by developing countries, and those were successful. And the main goal of our project is that we have a wide array of public policies of already piloted programs. The second pillar, which is essential, is funding. It is important to highlight, though, that the Global Alliance Against Hunger is not an additional funding that the donor countries have to make available. But the Global Alliance mission is that they need to identify all the funding sources that can be applied into the public policies in order to attack the SDG 1 and 2 problems. There's many global organizations with their funding sources, and in this case, one of the ways that we can finance public policies is to try to make sure that these fundings have a certain percentile of all these resources. For example, 5% should be destined for social policies for the SDG 1 and 2. And another possibility for funding is what we call to do exchanges between public debt and public policies. For example, if we owe another country, we can use that debt instead of the creditor pay. So this is kind of like written off as long as that money is used to finance public policies. We have, for example, if we have countries that would like to do a specific project, we can use existing fundings. They can make a deposit and make it clear through rules that that amount should be used for public policies. But this fundamental point is that we have a wide array of options, both on the perspective of countries that need to implement those policies, but also the creditors, that is, international organisms. So you have options. So everybody can find a way to try to help, and then say, oh, this is how I can help, and well, my status fits better this way. And the third pillar is knowledge. That is, the international agencies, the cooperation agencies of countries which have experience on how those programs have to be implemented. For example, to develop an online registration. So you need expertise, because if you don't have expertise on how to implement it, it's really difficult to implement a unified registry. These three pillars should be aligned, and we have a wide array of options, which include the type of public policies that should be implemented. In the case of Liberia, for example, they have to check which public policy is more adequate. From the point of view of funding, we can incorporate a great number of public sector and creditors, and we have organisms that, for example, in Liberia. So how can we get there? So in practice, so this is the design of the Global Alliance Fighting Against Hunger, and the outcomes so far, the support can be big. So on the July 24th, we're going to have a ministry meeting with President Lula and the constitutive documents will be approved. And we're going to start,
pensar que esses pilares a gente tenha
we're going to make sure that we put those pillars into practice after identifying the expertise required. So the bottom line is, so fighting against hunger and the social inclusion is the general theme. This is the theme number one. And the Global Alliance Against Hunger will maybe be, for example, if I have to say in a nutshell, if I had to say the mission of our government is Global Alliance Against Hunger. So we have actors and players from other countries and private sector. Once we implemented the Global Alliance, and we need to establish ways to meet people's needs so that we can arrive at great results. So, and that's what I have to share. That's what I would like to encourage.
I think we really like that. I think the Global Alliance Against Hunger is really something that I feel our constituency of local and regional governments, of which urban 20 cities are part of, really identify with. And the part that we might need to still think about, and we have some time, right, until constituting that, is beyond thinking of defining percentages to be dedicated to famine policies or to hunger policies. Could we also think of dedicating a percentage to local hunger policies, for instance? I really think that we have a challenge to get local public services funded, as you have been hearing here. And those numbers that you have heard from the OECD on how little percentage actually reach that type of development addressing hunger are similar and lower in some cases, in others a little bit higher, to the investment that is done at local level. And so we are very hopeful that with inclusion and poverty alleviation and addressing hunger being one of the priorities of Brazil, we can also try to push for more enabling environments to have cities access directly to funding, to have cities guarantee funds as well, but to also have some of those dedicated funding in the hunger policies, not to talk about also direct access to the loss and damage fund, right? So it's just a little bit our picture from our side to you, and we will make sure that those reach you in due time. We started a little bit late, and we are going straight to our opening, to our formal opening ceremony. But I don't want to close this plenary without going back to the mayor again. I don't know, Mayor, if there is something that you would like to add at this point, or you say, I'm okay, and I'll go to the opening. Your microphone is there. Please, sir, the floor is yours.
Emília, agradecer, acho que a gente teve aqui
I would like to thank everybody. We have a very productive beginning.
trazendo aqui parte do Felipe essa preocupação.
And Felipe brought his global concern,
As respostas com relação
and you gave the right answers regarding the funds. So
fundamental que devemos estar aqui.
I think it's really crucial to be discussing these issues here at the G20, through the Urban 20, by focusing on fighting against hunger and food security. And I would also like to add that besides the work of governance, as Felipe had just said, there are institutions that work collaborative addressing this issue. In São Paulo, Brazil, we have Geise Diniz, and she leads a great program on the Pact Against Hunger that unites several companies. And this is really a prioritary theme. We have governments engaging, and this is one of our central issues here at 20, and we have different spheres of the government, municipal, national, and state. And we cannot accept that people live in situations below the line of poverty, starving, and we need to take action, and that's what I wanted to highlight. And as the mayor of the city of São Paulo, I would like to thank you for being here, and we are really proud to host such an important event.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for this very candid display of priorities. And now on to the opening ceremony. Thank you very much.